When I bought my house on Willow Crest Hill, the thing I loved most was the pond. It wasn't big enough for boats or swimming, but it was peaceful, shimmering water, dragonflies hovering, and the soft ripple of wind sliding across the surface. My backyard sloped downward, and the pond sat at the bottom, acting as a natural barrier that kept the soil moist and the hill stable. I had lived there for 6 years without a single issue. But then the HOA board changed. The new president, Karen Whitmore, marched into her role like a general taking command. She had big ideas, big plans, and an even bigger obsession with neighborhood aesthetics. Within the first month, she launched a full beautification campaign, which was just HOA speak for expensive, unnecessary changes that nobody asked for. The worst part was her fixation on my pond. During the first community meeting, Karen clicked her PowerPoint remote with dramatic flair and showed a slide titled, "Eyesore number 4, the backyard pond." She pointed at the screen like she was exposing a crime scene. "Natural features are wonderful," she said, "but this pond is stagnant, unattractive, and lowers visual harmony in the community. It must be drained." I raised my hand. "The pond is fine. It's been here longer than the HOA has existed, and it helps stabilize the ground at the bottom of the hill." Karen waved dismissively. "Sir, I've consulted a landscaping blogger, and they confirmed that small private ponds can look swampy. We want clean, open grass. It will make the neighborhood look more premium." A few people nodded, mostly her friends. Most just sat quietly, not wanting to challenge her. That's how Karen ruled, through exhaustion, not logic. 2 weeks later, I came home to the roar of a pump. My pond was half empty. Water gushed through tubes into a drainage ditch. HOA workers, contracted at my expense, stood around doing the bare minimum. When I confronted them, their supervisor said, "We have authorization." I stormed to Karen's house. She met me at the door with a smirk and a clipboard. "It's for aesthetics," she said, "and you'll thank us when your yard looks more uniform." I didn't thank her. I warned her. Without that pond, the soil is going to dry out, shift, and slide. The hill could erode. She rolled her eyes. "Please, don't be dramatic." But 3 weeks later, the grass where the pond once rested turned yellow. Cracks formed on the slope. The earth looked like it was inhaling, preparing to collapse. And I felt it in my gut. Karen's aesthetic decision was about to turn into a disaster. None of us could ignore. The first real sign of trouble appeared on a quiet Thursday morning. I stepped into my backyard with a cup of coffee, expecting the usual peaceful view. Except now, without the pond, everything looked wrong. The soil that used to glisten with moisture was dull and flaky. The grass had turned brittle, almost grayish, and the ground felt hollow under my feet, like a drum being tapped. As I walked toward the bottom of the slope, something caught my eye, a long, jagged line slicing through the earth. A crack, not a tiny one, but one wide enough that I could stick 2 fingers inside. I crouched down and felt the ground. It wasn't firm. It shifted slightly beneath my hand, like it was breathing. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just erosion. This was the beginning of a structural failure. I immediately called the HOA office. No answer. I sent pictures, videos, and voice notes. Still nothing. So, I marched to the community center where Karen usually hid behind her desk like a queen guarding her throne. She didn't even look up when I walked in. "Karen, we have a problem. A serious problem. The hill is cracking." She sighed dramatically, finally lifting her eyes in the slowest, most annoyed way possible. "Sir, soil naturally shifts. It's normal, especially after landscaping changes." "This isn't normal. This is dangerous." She tapped her pen on the desk. "You're exaggerating again. We already improved your yard by removing that swampy pond. The least you can do is be grateful." "Grateful?" I snapped. "You drained the one thing that kept my hill intact. If this continues, the entire slope could collapse." Her smile hardened. "Our landscaping consultant said this wouldn't happen." "Consultant?" I repeated. "The guy who runs a blog called Lawn Perfection Daily? That consultant?" She crossed her arms. "He has thousands of followers." "Karen, the ground is splitting open." But she refused to budge. She told me the HOA would monitor the situation and closed her office door inches from my face. That was the moment I realized something. Karen wasn't just stubborn. She was determined to never admit she was wrong. By the weekend, the cracks multiplied. Some stretched horizontally across the slope. Others sank downward, forming dips in the earth. The soil near the bottom started sliding subtly, leaving uneven ridges. My neighbors began noticing too, especially those whose yards connected to the hill. One evening, my next-door neighbor, Daniel, knocked on my door. He looked pale. "Hey, have you seen the hill?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "It's getting worse." "It's not just worse," he whispered. "I think it's moving." And then he said the words I'd been dreading. "If this continues, someone's yard is going to collapse, maybe even someone's house." The disaster was no longer theoretical. It was inevitable. By the following Tuesday, the hill wasn't just cracking, it was sinking. The ground had shifted so noticeably that even walking across the backyard felt like stepping on a crooked, uneven staircase. The soil grumbled beneath every footstep, and the grass sagged into new depressions that hadn't existed the day before. Every morning brought a new surprise, each one worse than the last. And Karen still insisted everything was perfectly normal. Around noon, I heard a deep, rumbling noise, like thunder muffled underground. I rushed outside. Daniel was already standing in his yard, pointing toward the hill with wide, terrified eyes. "Look," he yelled. A section of the slope, about 15 feet across, had begun to droop forward. The soil shifted in slow motion, slumping downward like a melting cake. Clumps of grass folded over each other. Pebbles rolled ahead of the sliding earth. A small tree tilted sharply, roots ripping out of the ground with an ugly, tearing sound. Then the soil gave way entirely. The whole section collapsed, cascading downward in a brown, dusty avalanche. It wasn't fast like in movies. It was slow, heavy, and unstoppable. The ground dropped almost 3 feet, leaving behind a hollow, jagged bowl carved into the hill. Dust puffed into the air. Birds scattered. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "Oh my God! Oh my God! Karen needs to see this. I've been telling her," I said, "but she won't listen." We weren't the only ones watching. 3 more neighbors stepped outside, phones recording, staring in disbelief as their once stable yards turned into geological chaos. From the top of the hill, a wooden fence leaned at a disturbing angle, posts dangling like loose teeth. Another inch, and it would fall. Karen finally appeared, marching down the sidewalk with her clipboard tucked tightly under her arm. She looked annoyed, like the hill had personally offended her schedule. "All right," she said, scanning the damage. "What exactly is everyone panicking about?" Daniel pointed at the collapsed section. That right there. The hill is literally falling apart." Karen squinted. "It's settling. Natural settling. Very common after aesthetic adjustments." "Aesthetic adjustments?" I exploded. "You drained the pond. The water held the soil in place. Without the moisture, everything dried up and shifted." Karen attempted a smile, but it looked more like she was chewing a lemon. "Let's not jump to conclusions. We'll conduct an official HOA review." As she spoke, the ground behind her cracked sharply. "CRRK?" Everyone froze. A thin line split across the upper slope, snaking downward like a lightning bolt. Karen slowly turned to look at it, her smile evaporating. For the first time since her beautification campaign began, she looked genuinely scared, because now she couldn't deny it. The hill wasn't settling. It was collapsing. That night, the neighborhood felt tense, quiet in a way that made the air feel heavier. By morning, the hill looked even worse. The collapse from the day before had triggered deeper shifts underground. The crack that formed behind Karen had widened overnight, carving a long wound through the upper slope. The fence at the top finally gave up, toppling forward and landing halfway down the hill like a defeated soldier. By 9 a.m., a crowd gathered. Homeowners stood shoulder to shoulder, murmuring anxiously. Some held their phones, documenting everything. Others held printed copies of HOA bylaws, ready to fight. For the first time, no one was afraid to challenge Karen. Karen herself stood stiffly near the edge of the damage, clutching her clipboard like a life raft. Her usual smug confidence had drained away, just like my pond. I stepped forward. "Karen, this is beyond an HOA review. This is structural failure. My backyard is collapsing. My neighbor's yard is next. And if this keeps spreading, someone's foundation is going to crack." She swallowed hard. I followed the advice I was given. "You drained a natural water source because you thought it wasn't pretty," I said. "That pond held this entire slope together. And you ignored every warning." The ground let out another long groan, as if agreeing with me. A chunk of soil slid down from the upper ridge, scattering over the collapsed bowl. Gasps erupted from the neighbors. Finally, Daniel stepped beside me. Karen, you put our homes at risk. This isn't aesthetics. This is negligence. One by one, the neighbors voiced their frustration. You ignored our emails. You shut down every complaint. You made changes without homeowner approval. You drained something that was never yours to touch. Karen's hands trembled. Her voice cracked. I was trying to improve the community. Then fix it, I said. Starting today, the HOA board, who usually stayed silent behind Karen's authority, stepped forward at last. The vice president, a quiet man named Leonard, cleared his throat. Effective immediately, he announced. The board is voting to suspend enforcement. Actions related to this pond. Removal until we launch a full investigation. And we will be hiring a geotechnical engineer to assess the collapse. The crowd murmured with relief. And, Leonard added, given the severity of the situation, we will be reviewing the president's decision-making role. Karen's face went pale. She looked like someone had drained the color straight out of her, much like she drained the pond. Over the next week, engineers confirmed everything. The pond had been a natural stabilizer. Draining it dried the soil, caused shrinkage, and destabilized the hill. The collapse was the direct result of HOA interference. Karen resigned quietly. The hill will take months to repair. The pond, however, is coming back. And this time, not even an HOA president with a clipboard can take it away.